Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're unpacking a literal psychological thriller hidden inside a 400-year-old text, revealing what is honestly an absolute masterclass in manipulation and dramatic irony. We're going to look really closely at one of the most famous scenes in literature, Act 2, Scene 2 of Shakespeare's Julius Caesar, and break down exactly how it all works. So you have to ask yourself, how do you convince the most powerful man in the world to walk directly into his own assassination? Let's dive right into it. We're not treating this like some dusty, boring history lesson. No, we're looking at this as a high-stakes psychological breakdown. What we're really watching here is an ego-driven leader being actively managed and manipulated by a subordinate. It's a dynamic you might actually recognize from modern boardrooms or political arenas, but obviously with literally life-or-death consequences.
All right, part 1, the Night of Terrors.
We start off by setting the immediate stakes. It's the middle of this terrifying night. Thunder, lightning, and Caesar's life is in grave danger, even if he doesn't fully want to admit it yet. Right in these opening lines, the tension is just sky high before anyone even really has a conversation. Caesar enters in his nightgown, pointing out that neither heaven or earth has been at peace. His wife, Calpurnia, has cried out, "Help, ho, they murder Caesar," 3 times in her sleep. Right from the jump, the subconscious truth of this assassination plot is just echoing through Caesar's own house.
Calpurnia then enters, and she's just begging him to stay home. To make her case, she highlights a truly terrifying sequence of events reported by the night watchman. We're talking a lioness giving birth in the city streets, graves physically opening up to yield their dead, fiery warriors fighting in the clouds so fiercely that blood literally drizzled upon the Capitol, and ghosts shrieking. She is desperately emphasizing this profound supernatural dread hanging over Rome just to get her husband to stay inside.
What's really fascinating here is how incredibly accessible this archaic text actually is when you get down to it. When you strip away the Elizabethan English, what you have is just a terrified wife begging her stubborn husband to listen to reason. Calpurnia explicitly says she never used to pay attention to omens, but these are beyond anything anyone has ever experienced. And Caesar, he just completely dismisses her, essentially saying that if the gods intend for something to happen, well, it can't be avoided.
Which brings us to part 2, omens and egos. To try and settle this massive tug of war between genuine, rational fear and blinding, destructive hubris, Caesar does what any powerful Roman would do. He consults the augurers. These were priests who literally sliced open animals to read the future from their internal organs. It was essentially the ultimate ancient lie detector test for the universe's intentions. Well, the servant returns to Caesar with some truly chilling news. The priests strongly advise him to stay home. Why? Because, incredibly, when they sacrificed the animal, they could not find a heart inside the beast. I mean, think about the psychological impact of that. A missing heart is the most unnatural, terrifying omen you could possibly imagine in this context. But Caesar's ego, it is just massive. Let's pause for a second to appreciate his legendary hubris here. Instead of, taking the hint, he literally twists the omen. He claims the gods are actually trying to shame cowardice, that he would be a beast without a heart if he stayed home out of fear. He declares that danger knows full well that he, Caesar, is more dangerous than he. He even compares himself and danger to 2 lions born on the exact same day, claiming he is the older and more terrible one. It's just a spectacular display of arrogance. Moving on to part 3, a gruesome prophecy. Despite all of Caesar's immense bravado, the dynamic suddenly shifts. Calpurnia realizes logic and omens just aren't working, so she drops to her knees and begs to take the blame for his absence. She tells him, "Hey, say it's my fear keeping you home, not yours." Tracking his decisions reveals that this supposedly resolute and unshakable leader actually flip-flops quite a bit. First, he's definitely going. Then the augurers warn him. Then, yielding to his wife's emotional plea and offering to let Mark Antony cover for him, he finally says, "I will stay at home." He actually yields, but literally at that exact moment, Decius, one of the key conspirators, walks through the door to fetch him for the Senate. Because Caesar feels he owes Decius an explanation, he tells him exactly why he isn't going. He explains that Calpurnia had this vivid, incredibly gruesome dream. She saw a statue of Caesar with 100 spouts running with pure blood, and many smiling, lusty Romans came and bathed their hands in it. Naturally, Calpurnia interprets this as a desperate, literal warning of imminent evil and murder. And that brings us to part 4, the art of manipulation. Enter Decius Brutus. Decius listens to the stream and instantly sees his entire assassination plot unraveling right in front of him. I mean, if Caesar stays home, he doesn't die. He has to pivot, and he has to do it fast. So he doesn't stutter, he doesn't panic, he brazenly looks the most powerful man in Rome right in the eye and tells him so smoothly that the dream has been interpreted all amiss. He tells him it was actually a fair and fortunate vision. This just brilliantly illustrates his manipulative genius. Notice how he takes the exact same terrifying image of a bleeding statue and spins it 180 degrees. Instead of a horrific murder, he claims the blood signifies that great Rome will draw reviving, life-giving blood from Caesar. He says great men will press around him for tinctures, stains, relics, and cognizance, basically treating him like a living saint whose very blood is a literal badge of honor. It is the ultimate intoxicating compliment. But Decius doesn't just stop at flattery. He then layers on the pressure with a perfectly constructed psychological trap. He casually mentions that the Senate plans to give Caesar a crown today. Then he drops the bait. You know, they might change their minds if you don't show up. He twists the knife by suggesting someone will definitely mock him, saying, break up the Senate till another time, when Caesar's wife shall meet with better dreams. Finally, he hits Caesar's absolute deepest insecurity, warning that the senators will whisper that Caesar is afraid. Decius is perfectly exploiting Caesar's desperate ambition for the crown and his paralyzing fear of looking weak in front of other men. The manipulation is absolutely flawless. Caesar instantly capes. He completely turns on his wife, calling her fears foolish, and says he's ashamed he even yielded to them. He dismisses his only true ally in the room and demands his robe so he can leave. Decius completely played him like a fiddle. Finally, Section 5. Walking into the trap. Now we're in the realm of agonizing, dramatic irony. Caesar feels totally empowered, while we, the audience, know exactly what's waiting for him at the Capitol. Tracing the final steps, the rest of the conspirators arrive at Caesar's house to essentially escort him to his death, and Caesar warmly welcomes them by name. He tells them he has an hour's talk in store for them later, and even invites them in to taste some wine with him like old friends before they all walk to the Capitol together. The tension here is just devastating. Caesar actually looks at the men who are literally about to stab him to death and asks them to be near me that I may remember you. It's incredibly heavy. And Brutus, one of his closest friends who has completely betrayed him, quietly reflects in a heartbreaking aside that being like friends is not the same as actually being friends. The trap has totally snapped shut, and Caesar is the one cheerfully leading the way. Ultimately, what this explainer reveals is that Caesar's massive ego was his true undoing. The storm, the omens, his wife's desperate pleas, none of it was enough to overcome his burning need to be perceived as an untouchable god among men. Which leaves us with a final provocative thought. Is it the fate of all powerful leaders in any era to be so easily blinded by flattery? Does undeniable power inevitably make us blind to our own vulnerabilities? Think about that the next time you see a leader confidently walking into a room, completely unaware of the daggers waiting for them. Thanks for joining me on The Explainer.